here with Erwin, a senior policy fellow at the European Blockchain Association. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
So how's it going so far at the World Blockchain Summit here in Dubai?
First off, it's my first time in Dubai, so I have to say that I'm very excited to be here. And I love that the city seems to change. When you look at it almost every day, and I think the summit is going quite well. There's a diversity of different projects here, and from the public and from the private sector as well, representatives. So I'm very happy to hear also what others have to say. And on our end, the European Blockchain Association is excited to represent and to share our knowledge and little bit about what's happening in Europe.
So anything you've heard that has particularly sparked your interest when it comes to regulation compared to Europe and here in the GCC?
Well, I was actually on the panel talking about regulation. So I think that what they've done with VARA, with the regime here is particularly interesting, especially with the speed that they achieved it. You have 7 pillars that are currently in place, covering everything from custody to exchanges to payment services. And we've done a similar approach in Europe, in that Europe made the decision back in 2015 to create a blockchain strategy. And kind of fast forwarding, we have MiCA, which is almost on the books, which is part of the digital finance package. We have the DLT pilot regime, which comes into force in a couple of days. We have the Digital Operational Resilience Act also, which allows multilateral trading facilities and central securities depositories to issue DLT-based infrastructure and trading systems, and gives them like a 6-year exemption from different financial services regulations, so they can then play around in those sandbox environments and not have to worry about breaking any financial rules. And I think that both approaches are really interesting from the perspective of accommodating regulation, but still being confident that you can do something to protect consumers.
And so what's your role when it comes to policymaking, or how do you see these?
So I'm a former regulator. I've spent some time in different EU institutions, and now I'm in the private sector, kind of representing the interests of the industry, and I would say also balancing the need for a dialogue with the public sector. So I coordinate policy, research, and advocacy between our members, the Web3 community, and public institutions in Europe, but also internationally. And a few things that I'm really excited about, I would start with, is identity. I think that identity really is Europe's story to tell. From
a digital identity.
Digital identity, exactly. So not only with the EU digital wallet and digital ID, but also what's happening in the Web3 space. For example, things like soul-bound tokens. You also have interesting identity projects spinning up from Polygon. Liquid staking, obviously, we have a lot of liquid staking and staking as a service providers in our association. And aside from that, I know it's a little contentious, but central bank digital currencies, from the perspective of how are they going to kind of coexist with different digital assets in the future.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that and your thoughts on that.
So when I look at CBDCs, I approach them, I'm a political economist, that's kind of my bread and butter trade. I approach them from a political perspective, and I'm of the mind that in the future you're probably going to have CBDCs, payment stablecoins, digital assets all kind of proliferating and pollinating together in these digital currency areas, so to speak. And I don't think you're going to have like a one-size-fits-all or one token wins all approach. And I think that's a good thing. We need healthy competition. I don't think that private money should crowd out public money, and I don't think that public money should crowd out private money.
Are there examples specifically that you're thinking of that have done like a good job so far?
Well, there's a lot of sandbox projects. One that recently launched from Swift. And last year they did this thing called Connecting Digital Islands, where they basically showed that you can connect different CBDC systems, and you can connect them through Swift's messaging network, and then you can tokenize assets against CBDCs, and then they just released a proof of concept connecting those CBD systems in like a hub and spoke model, where you could do like the CBDCs in their domestic jurisdictions, not having to leave that, but then have the Swift system as like this hub, and then the CBDCs as the spoke. But I don't think it's fair to just talk about CBDCs. I think that stablecoins, honestly, and programmable money itself needs to play a much larger solution. I was part of an initiative, fortunately, that was launched by the European Commission and the German Banking Association called Tokenize Europe 2025. And we explored, along with some industry partners, the need for private programmable money in Europe to prepare Europe not only for, let's say, digital transformation, but also the machine as a consumer.
So what does that mean exactly, private programmable money? Is that like...
So, for example, like a central bank digital currency is public money. Same way with cash is public money. But you have things like deposit tokens, which are private money. You could also have other forms of stable coins, for example. But in general, the need to have private programmable money that can handle machine-to-machine payments, that can handle fractionalization, pay-per-use, and things of this nature.
Peer-to-peer.
Not only peer-to-peer, I'm thinking also like the machine is a consumer.
Oh,
So
okay.
machines transact between themselves and with other machines. Machines have identities. Those identities are attested and verified. The machine has a wallet. The machine can trigger payments. And it's really hard to do that unless you have a form of private programmable money. So this initiative was exploring the way that Europe can prepare for a token economy, and one of the pillars that came out of that was this understanding that we need this approach also in Europe to make ourselves competitive on a global stage.
And which European states do you think are making the most progress?
I think
maybe
that
the fastest?
I think that it's a little too early to say who the front runners are, but I can definitely tell you that a lot of European countries are exploring blockchain and tokenization. Are all of them equally as excited about it? No.
Okay.
But I think that if you really want to be at the cutting edge, at the vanguard of this innovation cycle, then sooner or later you're going to have to make that determination. You know, do we jump into this head first, or do we kind of pull back? And I think that the pullback approach works insofar as you want to kind of like ring fence for consumers, but you know, that has to be balanced against letting innovation develop. And if you don't, then you could get left behind. But you know, it doesn't really matter, because with Mika coming into force, if you have a crypto asset service provider license in one jurisdiction, that's going to passport to all of the member states. So it doesn't matter whether I get a license in Germany or get a license in Italy or I get a license in France.
Yeah.
It's going to passport everywhere. So Mika creates a level playing field also. And I think that's really important, because we see the flip side of that, you know, the no regulation or the regulate by enforcement approach, which some other jurisdictions have taken, that maybe isn't the best for innovation and consumers.
And then whereas here it's all like government top-down approach, so things get done a little faster.
I would say that there's also some bottom-up initiatives. I wouldn't discount the fact that that this jurisdiction has a lot to offer. I think that you need a healthy balance and a dialogue between the public sector and the private sector. I've had the fortune to speak to different people today, and I think the more sage minds are kind of in agreement that, you know, you can't go it alone. And you know, unless we're suddenly now going to jump into this parallel economy where we just forget that the state exists and all of us just determine value based on. Right, we're probably not going to do that. So we need to speak together. We need to find a lingua franca. And education is honestly the cornerstone, the pillar of that. If we don't educate the private sector, if we don't educate the public sector, and if they don't speak the same language, we're always going to be in this feedback loop.
Yeah, agree. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time today.
Not a problem.